Okay, looks like this thing's rolling. Time for a video update. Today we're calling this one Living the Dream. If you'll notice, we got some football on the TV. We've got a freshly poured Angler's Pint of Busch Light. That's the beer of choice after chopping wood all morning and being productive. And my newest creation, this is what we're calling Coffee Table CWBS. If you recall, I was working on a Prairie Grove game using the line of battle system, and I still am doing that to a certain extent. But I wanted to try out some CWBS stuff too. It's been a long time since I've played CWBS, probably about a year, but I really enjoy the system. The problem is I've just not had any sort of motivation to put something out and play something that's going to stay set up for the long term. So I figured, what the heck, let's find something that's manageable. You can see this map fits perfectly on a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. We've got a turn track, some elevation, terrain stuff right here. I'm still kind of fiddling with the movement point allowances to see what works on a map this size. I think normal movement point allowances for units in CWBS is like 6 for line and 6 for column. I got it knocked down to 4 for this. It seems to be working okay. You can see right now I'm in the 4 o'clock p.m. turn, so there's 6 turns left to go. We've got one front and back of special rules. Some things I did initially are eliminate most of the orders and the command rules, so you're not going to be rolling to see if your units accept orders, because you really only have what amounts to basically a corps for each side. The Confederates have 3 divisions, 2 infantry divisions, 1 under Shout, 1 under Frost. And you'll see they're kind of lower quality C and D morale. And then there's also a Cav division under Marmaduke. They're even worse morale. Most of these Confederate units were armed with really outdated, terrible shotguns, flintlock muskets, those sorts of things. And a lot of them were recruited a couple months before the battle. Some of them were basically conscripted, so their morale is reflected with those circumstances. The Union has 3 divisions as well. This is the Army of the Frontier. Blunt, he's got some pretty decent units. Houston Jr. or Houston Jr., however you pronounce it. And then Heron. So Heron technically was the Army commander until Blunt shows up around 2:30. You can see he's been pretty beat up already. These guys rolled terribly. Those 2 divisions come in from up here, and they try to work their way down, and they kind of hit some of the Cav units that are set up here as screening units, and then Schaup's division comes up, and they're kind of defending the Rogers house, both of those, the Borden house, protecting this axis of advance. We got pretty unlucky because Houston Jr. fluked really early, so Heron got whacked pretty good. He took a lot of stragglers and rolled pretty badly for his morale and stuff like that. He ended up fluking too. So the way they're going to get out of fluke is the only way orders are written, the way I have it right now. This is not a game, right? This is not a CWBS game. This is not a MMP product. Dean has never signed off on this. This is something I'm just making up and doing for fun. But the rules that I have right now are going to force these guys to try to take initiative to give themselves new orders. It's been kind of boring for them because now they're just sitting there. I don't know if I would even be doing anything with Heron if I wanted to, because those guys need to recover. Some other little special rules that we've implemented are If you're forced to retreat off map, there are some rules for coming back on map, just because the play area is pretty restricted. The Confederates have very little artillery ammunition, and even though this is an army wagon, it is limited on how many refills it can do for low ammo. I want to say this guy over here is low ammo. Yep. Monroe, he's actually an optional unit. He was not at this part of the battle when it happened historically. There's also another Union unit that's an optional. We're playing with him too. Straggler recovery, I think I have a couple special little rules for them. There's no distance requirement. They just have to be out of small arms. Yada, 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 yada. Yeah, some other stuff. Victory conditions, I don't really know where those are going to end up. I've played through this once before, and the Union got toasted, so I'm trying it again just to see what happens here. I guess tentatively I'm calling it Wildfire on the Prairie. And I like it because it's something small, I can set it up. Plus I just have fun creating these little games and doing my own thing. I love these systems. These are great systems. CWBS is really underrated still. It's kind of sad that they're no longer making games in it, but I'm using everything from Antietam, so a bunch of the counters. Yeah, been kind of enjoying it here. This has been some interesting battling going on over here. These are Blunt's units that are coming down. They're starting to get engaged now. Frost has 3 brigades down here. Roan's protecting this little trail that runs down to Prairie Grove Church. Ultimately, the Union objective in this battle, they didn't know that all these Confederate units were up here on the hill. They thought there were a couple artillery pieces over here. So Herron ordered both of these divisions to move down and attack. Blunt ended up showing up later after these guys had kind of gotten into force here and pushed Herron back. So the Union ultimately is trying to take Prairie Grove Church. I think that's going to be pretty far-fetched at this point in order for that to happen. But we've got victory points for the Wilson House, the Morton House, W. Rogers, H. Rogers, Borden. So really anything that's out here on this little ridge line, historically, I don't know if historically, but in some of the books that have been written about it, they call that area the bench. And the Confederates, I've actually been trying to get initiative with Shoup, who I think Hindman is stacked on Shoup. I have a modifier. If the army leader is stacked with the divisional leader who's trying to give himself initiative, it's beneficial. He's actually been trying to attack out here and take the knoll, which is worth victory points. And there's also a little house up here, the Thompson House. There's a ford that crosses that thing. So, but yeah, it didn't take me long to make the map, which is nice. This is a lot easier than the stuff for LOB, because LOB I've got to take the terrain map, I've got to trace all the elevation lines, you got to go in, you got to be real particular. The scale there is 110 yards per hex. I think here it's 200 yards per hex. So, but that's kind of what's been going on. I haven't really played a lot recently. Uncle John and I did do some play testing for the campaign scenario in the LOB game, which I think I actually have set up, so I can show you that. Ooh, look at that cool wallpaper. That will be going someday. Right now, I'm working through my second campaign game of the line of battle Prairie Grove thing that I've been doing. The first one I played with Uncle John opposed. It ended up kind of like, I think it's going to most of the time. Historically, the Union didn't really do much, and it was a stalemate. I think it's going to be really hard for them to do any better than happened historically. The Confederates just have a lot of units. The Union's better quality, but unfortunately with good die rolls or bad morale checks, that can be negated pretty quickly. But you can see here, Blunt's arrived on scene. You've got Confederate forces here in the woods. You can see I've updated some of those counters, made changes to them. There's pretty good resources for looking at some of the units in here. The weaponry is still kind of up in the air. Like I said, they were kind of armed with second-rate items and stuff like that. But been playing through this one. I don't know if there's really much here for line of battle. I think if you're interested in the Battle of Prairie Grove, you would enjoy it because you can put the counters out, you can see what happened, you can play through it, get a sense for what the battle was like. If you're just looking to play a game that's super interesting, I don't really think there's a lot here for LOB just because it's so small. There's not a ton of stuff you're going to be doing from the command side of things. There's not really a ton of room to maneuver, and the biggest thing is there's just not a lot of units. So if you aren't playing smart and you take a bunch of losses early or something, you could have one of your 3 divisions basically wrecked for the rest of the game and you can't do anything with it. So still, been enjoying it. It's fun. This is what I like to do. So that's that. Just thought I'd check in. We'll see what happens with this over here. I assume maybe if I can tighten up some of the victory conditions and make it a little interesting, I'll probably just contact Dean and see if it's okay if I just let people play it for free. Obviously, I'm not trying to make money off of this stuff. It's just something I like to do. So that's that. I hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving. Things are fun when the wife's at work and you're not. So we're watching football. We're just hanging out. I think the dog's asleep over there. Yep. And we'll see about drinking that and playing some more of this. Oh, I do need to make a video on reserves and initiative for line of battle. That'll be the last thing I got to do for the video series teaching the rules. Unfortunately, I've been lazy. Maybe I'll do that. We'll see. I don't know. I could win some brownie points by sweeping the floors and doing stuff like that, but nah. This is more fun. All right, see ya. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. If you're into that, enjoy the weekend. Bye.